In the morning, they began chopping, but the timber was so frozen, it broke their axes. Father did not return to Montrose until the next spring.
Great stands of hemlock, pine, oak, maple. They forested the majestic mountains that would become the backdrop against which the borough of Montrose would rise. In 1799, Stephen Wilson, originally from Vermont and then Otsego County in neighboring New York State, found his way here. His first cabin was near what would become a boundary of the current borough of Montrose. Wilson also found quickly flowing fresh water and a variety of plants and roots which were believed to have curative powers. He and others, for some time to come, would also find signs of earlier habitation. Implements of the Lenni-Lenape and the Tuscarora, and of course, a land full of deer, bear, wild turkey, a large variety of freshwater fish, nuts, and berries. By 1801, just 2 years into development as a community known as the Hines Settlement, a 4th of July celebration marked the first 25 years of the fledgling United States. Without a cannon, the settlers made do with 13 trees that had been cut nearly through and felled one on the other in succession. It was 12 years before a courthouse would be built. Diets consisted of what could be wrestled from the earth, some mashed cornmeal, milk from the family cow, and a little maple sugar. The latter was worth about 12 cents a pound and could be traded in Tunkhannock for 4 river shad. Such were the Spartan beginnings of what would become Montrose, a place of beauty high in the old Appalachians that calls natives and visitors back time and time again. Those early beginnings were populated with the likes of Stephen Wilson, a Vermont native who had settled at Bridgewater in 1799, about a half-mile below the center of present-day Montrose, and the first house below the Wyalusing Creek, where the path from Hop Bottom intersected. He would eventually leave the area and settle in Bradford County, and then to Allegheny County, New York, where he eventually died. But the name synonymous with the development of the borough itself was Bartlett Hines. As a matter of fact, it was Hines' original settlement in 1799 that created a point on a map carved from the native hemlocks and maples that would become Montrose. Through connections with land speculators from Philadelphia who held title to great tracts in the area, Captain Hines was also able to move into the circle of landed gentry that was purchasing Susquehanna County land at the then considerable sum of $2.50 per acre. It was all legal and all payable, if you chose, in payments of wheat, rye, or cattle at a fair exchange rate. And so it began.
The first post office in Montrose was built on March 1st, 1808.
By 1810, an act of legislature was passed setting Susquehanna aside from Luzerne County. At the time, there were just 3 homes in what would become Montrose. By 1813, the first courthouse in the county was completed.
The first courthouse was built by a man by the name of Oliver C. Smith, now at the same location as the present courthouse. That was back in 1811 at a cost of $4,500. A lot of people would probably buy for a cheap garage today. $4,500 was the cost of the original courthouse. The present courthouse was built in 1854 and completed in 1855 at a contract cost of $18,500. It's just almost unbelievable to think of a building of that kind being built at a contract cost of that much. The architect got $320, and the furniture, including the bell, cost $1,425.70, which made a total of $20,245.70. The town clock on our courthouse was bought by the citizens of Montrose and placed in the cupola at the expense of the people. And that contains the slogan, "Where to the north and the south, to the east and west, it points with its hands to the minutes as they fly, while with slow measured stroke it works a sad unrest to hear its midnight toll for the winds as they sigh."
Montrose would grow and prosper. Names like Hines, Rose, Baldwin, Post, Burchard, and others would sweep across our landscape and contribute to the development not only of Montrose, but all of Susquehanna County. As farming took hold, Montrose and the county prospered.
And the number of stone walls you see on farms. The farmer, you see, would go out to plow his fields, and there'd be a lot of these good-sized stones that would be plowed up that were only in his way, so he needed fences, and so they'd remove these stones and probably acquire them maybe from a pasture and from other places, so they'd had enough of them, and they would lay stone walls. You can go almost anywhere in Susquehanna County, and you can see these old original fences, which were stone walls.
Nearby stands of native oak, birch, maple, and other construction timbers further added to the prosperity of the area. By the 1830s, the issue of slavery in the young United States was already dividing opinion and gathering proponents on both sides of the issue. The first meeting of the Susquehanna County Anti-Slavery and Free Discussion Society was held, ironically and perhaps appropriately enough, on the 4th of July, Independence Day, in 1836. Names like Payson Kingsbury of Hartford Township, William Pride of Springville, John Mann, Choconut, Elkanah Bowles, Jessup, and Arthur Southworth of Liberty were among the first members. Less than a month after its founding, the society, which had been established to espouse freedom, was labeled a band of criminals. Still, many local residents continued to support the abolitionist position. One benefit of the National Fugitive Slave Law of 1850 was to further bond the sentiments of area residents who then became more intently involved in the Underground Railroad movement.
One of the stations of the Underground Railroad, and you talk to a lot of people nowadays, and they don't know what you're talking about. But the slaves from the South who wanted to get away from the slave owners would head north. If they could get to Canada, which is free territory. Then they'd escaped being in a nation where slavery was the law. Under the fugitive slave law, the North was under just as much obligation in the Northern to enforce that law or see that it not stand in the way of its being enforced as anyone living in the South. The fugitive slave law is a national law. And of course, in towns like Montrose, most northern towns, there was no sympathy.
From points south, including Wilkes-Barre, Pittston, Scranton, and Abington, runaway slaves on their way to Canada always found help and hospitality in Montrose. A number of homes, most long gone, offered safe harbor to those in need on the long flight to freedom. Perhaps the old post home on Cherry Street is the last remaining link with the Underground Railroad. It remains in silent testimony to the greatest issue of the 19th century.
The four Lyons brothers went from Montrose to fight in the Civil War. 3 of them were killed, and it was Captain Jerome was the one who survived. He came back to Montrose to supervise the erection of a Civil War monument that stands on a monument square.
By the 1880s, Montrose was a bustling metropolis capable of offering up services from the corner butcher shop to dry goods at Caterson's 5-cent to $1 store and more.
Nowadays, a lot of our young people probably wouldn't think of Montrose as a railroad town. When I came here in 1917, we actually had 3 railroads. We had the Northern Electric, which operated between here and Scranton and went down through Brooklyn. We probably noticed the viaducts and other places are leftovers of the tracks have all been taken up. Anyway, that electric line operated from Montrose into Scranton, pick up passengers of Brooklyn, Nicholson, the other towns where it stopped. And they had a small station, Borough Line, where the electric line from Scranton terminated. He'd bring those into the courthouse and then pick up passengers at the courthouse and take them out there. I've understood that the businessmen of Montrose and probably some other residents objected to having the electric line run through the streets of the town. And that's why when the line was built, they had it end at the edge of the borough. So that was one of the 3 railroads. Now the other was the branch road. They called it L&M, Lackawanna and Montrose. It operated between Montrose and Alfred on the main line of the DLW. And I forgot how many trips a day, maybe it was 2 a day, that a small train would go from Montrose down into Alfred, take passengers down who would be on their way to either Scranton or Binghamton, and then passengers coming into Montrose, bring them back into the town. The railroad station, which was later used as a bakery, was located right near the firemen's headquarters.
Disaster struck with frightening consequences in 1886. Fire engulfed nearly the entire westerly side of Main Street. Once fanned, this killer flame traveled from store to store until structures had been reduced to no more than smoldering mounds of ash. Mr. C.M. Crandall had developed a business manufacturing wooden toys. It was large, it employed many townspeople, and is considered to this day to be the pioneer wooden toy factory in the United States. Fire broke out in the toy factory in 1886 that could not be contained. By the time it had run its course, 27 buildings on Main Street had been taken. Everything from the present department store to the Bilo, formerly the Acme building, was lost. All, incidentally, were wooden frame structures. From that time forward, brick became the standard building material. Subsequent fires in 1928, 1931, and an all-night battle in 1960 that consumed the Dean Phipps store and displaced 13 tenants have all played their own particular havoc with Montrose's downtown. But each time disaster strikes, Montrose rebounds with the vigor and determination of those first founding settlers who would not be driven from the wilderness in 1799. Businesses have come and gone. Some, like Lee's Furniture, continue a family tradition into their second century of operation as Montrose begins its third century.
The Montrose Club was formed in 1898. This year we're celebrating our 100th anniversary. During the war years, actually this whole area grew up because we didn't have gasoline to run the vehicles, and so for about 3 or 4 years the course was shut down, and shortly after the war a group of local citizens put together a brand new club called the Montrose Club, and we've been in existence, well, since then, but really for 100 years now. The Montrose Club is a private club. Most of our members come from the immediate area. However, we draw a number of them from the Binghamton, Triple Cities area. And originally when we were founded, because Montrose was a summer community, many of our members came from the New York City or Philadelphia area. And some of those same families still come to Montrose in the summertime and are our members. So, but for the most part, most of our members are from within probably a 15-mile radius of Montrose.
In the autumn of 1907, the Reverend John McInnes of Montrose invited Dr. R.A. Torrey, a well-known pastor, author, and teacher from Chicago, to visit the area with the hope of persuading Torrey to establish his anticipated Bible conference in Montrose. After arriving, McInnes took him to the highest ridge of the 160-acre Sayre farm, which was for sale at the time, just north of Lake Avenue. From there, they had a wonderful view of Lake Montrose in the one direction and a beautiful sunset in the other. Delighted with the surrounding area and the mild summer climate, Dr. Torrey decided this was the place. The very next day, he went looking for a house. Torrey was immediately drawn to a large red brick house built before the Civil War on a 5-acre plot of land near the corner of Lake Avenue and Locust Street. He arranged to buy the house from the Beach family and planned to occupy it after January of 1908. The Montrose Movement, as it was then known, held its first summer conference in August of 1908 at the Montrose Fairgrounds under a large tent. Attendance ranged from roughly 1,500 in the mornings to 2,500 persons during some of the evening meetings, with out-of-town guests being required to stay in private homes throughout Montrose. Since that first summer, the Montrose Bible Conference has developed into a year-round conference and retreat center with many programs and facilities to accommodate churches and Christian organizations. This includes teen and children's camps, adult and family conferences, as well as the opportunity for groups to hold their own retreats. Nearing the close of its first century of operation, as the 20th century closes, the Montrose Bible Conference continues strong in its tradition of Christian witness and retreat haven on the same mountaintop it began on one fall day in 1907. Blessed by nature with incredible beauty, a four-seasons recreational paradise that keeps them coming back, Montrose enters a new century and millennium with the confidence of knowing our assets will continue to work for us. From pioneering crossroads in the wilderness to welcoming stop along the Underground Railroad and today's economic center of the county, Montrose remains a jewel in the crown of the endless mountains and a step back in time from the world around it.